Good evening, everybody. How we doing? Got a few people that are still coming in, I think, and we will let them. Thanks for spending your Friday evening with us. You know, Monday night was instantly the more popular night. Starting the week off, everybody's feeling good. So, true warriors in here, my Friday night folks. Worked all week or retired all week. Either way, you're tired all week, right? So my name's Mitchell Tyler, and I'm one of the owners and co-founders of Safeside. Anybody's first time in the building tonight? Couple? Good. All right. Great. Well, thank you for coming. We do so many different things to try to invite people into the building, and we're always excited when something new works and lets us meet new great people. So thank you for being here with us tonight. If you were here Monday, you saw lots of cameras and media folks, and we were grateful to have really positive coverage, media coverage. So it was just a good opportunity to get our message out, and some of the nice, smiling, happy gun owner people were on the news with me and with other people. And if you were here and you were part of that, I appreciate you putting on your best face and really showing the community how we want gun owners to be seen. All right, I'll go to the PowerPoint here, please. I had to do the March 6th update because even since Monday, a few of my slides have changed because of Richmond. And so we had to update it for tonight with a few additional improvements of accurate data. So if you came Monday night, you think you've heard it all, just wait. And I'll get into this later, but in Richmond, it's still Thursday, and I'll tell you why that is later. I want to start out by just saying thank you to those who have or are serving, whether you've been in our armed forces in any capacity, our fire, EMS. We just appreciate everybody that looks out for us and is looking out for you. And if it's not you, your family, that's a sacrifice in itself. And so we thank you for your service. And if you're here with us tonight, I just want to say a round of applause for you guys. Who is Safeside? So, there we go. We started in the living room of our Bedford County house, moved into the Roanoke Valley when I was young in elementary school. My father had grown up here in Roanoke, born and raised, mostly raised, definitely born. My grandparents were from here also, and so we have a lot of history in Roanoke. My great uncle actually had a store just a couple blocks from here back in the 50s. And so it's nice to be in Roanoke, in the city, and with great people that are here. We decided that we would open a small storefront because at the time, and as ironic as this sounds, Bedford County would not let you have an FFL in your home. One of the few counties around here that wouldn't, which, if you know Bedford, that just doesn't really fit. That has since been changed. You can do almost anything in your home back then except for have a FFL. So we found a little space in Stewartsville, and after I shampooed the carpets, because it used to be a veterinary clinic, about 10 times, we threw some paint on the walls, kills, and we got opened up in December of 2012, ended up getting our license approved in February of 2013. And within about 6 months, well, really sooner than that, but within about 6 months, we had a problem. We had a problem with parking. We had a problem with our wives. We'd open at 10 some days, and at 9, people were already in the parking lot. So this nice, easy hobby sort of side project turned quickly into something that we knew we were going to have to put more focus on. And so we hired a full-time employee, Ronnie. If any of you guys knew Ronnie, it's worked for us for years. And together we sort of crafted this vision day by day. And in October of 2013, we moved into the old Cascade Gardens building out on 24, which is where we picked up a lot of you folks who had made the journey out to Bedford and to Stewartsville and came and saw us and saw how we were doing things and liked some of it at least and came back again. So in 2015, We purchased this facility, which was the old Nolan Plumbing Building. Anybody Nolan customers in here? If you're from Roanoke, yeah, see, mostly guys. This was a honeydew haven over here, right? And you could get any fitting that you needed or any pipe. And we still have a few Nolan Plumbing employees that'll come in from time to time and reminisce about the building. And what a great facility that it was just sitting here. It was just perfect for us. Ended up, it was very hard to find in Roanoke a building long enough for a 100-yard indoor range. It was easier to get the city to say yes than it was to find the building for that. And we just happened to get both. And we opened here a temporary retail space in November of that year. And then we opened the range here in October of 2016. Simultaneously, we were working on plans to open the range in Lynchburg, which happened in October of 2017. Our mission statement's simple. With the focus on safety, we exist to equip, train, and empower our customers through a wide variety of products, services, our knowledgeable staff, and our state-of-the-art facilities. It just so happens today's Employee Appreciation Day. So I'd like to give a round to our staff also, because without them, we could not do what we do. And then I can admit it was a little easier to manage when it was Matthew and I behind the counter and JR within earshot and sight making deals that we didn't authorize. It's much harder to track now. So if you need a deal on a gun, you want to find JR. Okay, I'll just give you the hint. We began with the focus on getting everyone into the club. So, and I don't know if any of you have experienced this, but my brother and I specifically, when we were coming of age to where we could legally purchase firearms, when we were coming of age to where we were going to get engaged and looking for like the engagement ring, we started to find out about profiling, right? And how people assessed how you dressed, how you looked, what your hair looked like, what your clothes looked like. And gun shops were notorious for having this club, and not just the gun shops with rocking chairs and nicotine stained ceiling tiles, but it was the good old boys club in a lot of places. And we might have been good and we might have been boys, but we were not the good old boys. And so we found some places that eventually opened up, but we started Safeside with this vision that we had the good old boys club also, but that anyone could be in it and that you already sort of were. So when we started, we had badges that said, "Ask me about the club." That's what our staff wore around here. And the whole point was just to say, look, people will judge you wherever you go. We can't stop people from doing that, even if they work for us. But when we judge you, we're going to judge you and say, yes, like you're part of us. Welcome. You're part of this family. Customer passing through, you work here, you don't, it's fine. So that was really one of the big focuses. Also, when we're going to talk about assault weapons, ARs, and things like them later, we started manufacturing and building our own in 2013. Once we moved here, our classes really shot up as far as attendance and what we could offer. So we were shooting on our farm about one Saturday or Sunday a month with a group of 6 or 8 people behind the barn down by the creek. Anybody shot at a place like that before? Oh, yeah. Yeah. So, well, those were during the Tannerite days, sir. You and a group of neighbors probably got together on that, and we had to build an indoor range. What can I say? But we've now trained over 7,000 students in just our concealed handgun classes over the last few years. And we've had over 200,000 range users, and many of you guys are in that number. So we appreciate your business and being a part of the Safeside experience. So what happened? How did we get here? I think that these maps I pulled to show first because what color do you see mostly when you look up there? Red. A couple of y'all still thinking about it. It is red. Okay. On the left, you see the Senate election results from 2019, November. And you see on the right, the House. And on the Senate, the balance of power in the Senate is very, very close, 21-19. The Democrats just have just that barely, that leading edge. And because our lieutenant governor is a Democrat, he breaks the tie. And so 1 doesn't help us. 2 is what we need to win out on the floor. And luckily, we had a few more friendly Democrats in committees that mattered, that we were able to get some swing there. But ultimately, it was super close. The House, the 54 to 43, that's a much harder thing to change. But we're going to look at another map later. It has a different color on it. And I just want you to kind of remember this big red map with little blue splotches on it. So for the first time in 26 years, the Democrats have control of both houses and the governor's mansion. This is a historic time for them, a time that has been the culmination of a lot of elections, a lot of money, probably some Bloomberg money, maybe, we think. Anybody agree? Yeah. Probably. I don't know for sure. I don't see the checkbook, okay? But it feels like some Bloomberg money came in here. And one of the things that gave the Democrats momentum was this special session. And so the governor called the special session this summer in July as a direct result of the Virginia Beach shooting. And a strategic decision was made by Republicans that I'm sure that in some back rooms they're still talking about. But we didn't discuss any of the governor's legislative agenda, and we're going to look at those things specifically. But that 90-minute gavel down gave the Democrats the ammo, proverbial ammo they needed to basically say, Republicans aren't going to compromise at all. It's going to be all or nothing. You guys have to give us your vote if you want gun control. And a lot of people decided to do that. The 8 legislative agenda items that we'll look at all came back up, and many of them were successful in this session. Virginia Democrats went to the polls in larger numbers than they have in the past, and they flipped 6 seats in the House, and 4 of those seats were defeating Republicans. The other 2 seats that flipped, the Republican was retiring, getting out. But those 4 flips are the most kind of painful ones, because those were areas where we had a candidate that was standing up for our Second Amendment rights and our Republican values, which typically aligns with gun owners. Although I try to speak very generically about some of this because we have some great Democrat gun owning customers. I won't ask you to raise your hand right now. However, I'm just going to say that most of my remarks we talk about Republicans and Democrats, but what we're really talking about is whether you believe in the Second Amendment and that it's valid in today or you don't. And I'd rather just have a 2A after someone's name than an R and a D, because I think sometimes we overgeneralize and sometimes we get ourselves in a jam by being overly generic about the party affiliation. But in general, we pretty much know which party is for 2A. Yeah. So look at these vote totals. House of Delegates voting, almost 200,000 additional people voted for a Democrat than voted for a Republican. And in the Senate, it was over 318,000. And I showed this, and I thought it was a valid kind of data point, because from time to time, you hear about voter fraud, you hear about dead people voting, you hear about people that have moved out of state. We talk about voter ID laws, and there's some serious concerns around all that. But there were not 318,000 voter fraud ballots cast. These are legit people that went out to the polls when we did not, in many cases, the collective we. And so we have to take some responsibility as the gun owners here in our circle of influence, our friends and family, even maybe personally an inconvenience, or I didn't meet this deadline for absentee voting, whatever it was. They really got their people out, and we really didn't. That's the bottom line of those totals. So you'll recognize many of these things, the legislative agenda that was proposed in the summer. And we knew as soon as that special session ended that these were going to be back, but I won't read them word for word. Background checks, universal background checks, legislation banning dangerous weapons, that's assault weapons. The reinstating the 1 handgun purchase a month, lost or stolen firearms to be reported within 24 hours, legislation creating the extreme risk protective order. Anybody know what that means? Red flag, yep. Legislation prohibiting individuals subject to final protective orders from possessing firearms, punishment for allowing access to loaded unsecured firearms by a child, and this is one of the big ones that we're watching still, legislation enabling localities to enact firearms ordinances that are stricter than state law. And we're going to get back to that in a minute, but you may or may not know that a locality like the city of Roanoke can't just say, we're not going to allow guns at our municipal building. They have to go to the legislature and get permission to do so. Other cities like Hampton, Richmond, some places in Northern Virginia have done that successfully in the past. But the city of Roanoke hasn't been able to because they only started trying a few years ago. And with a Republican majority, those bills never got pushed through. All right, so that's sort of how we got here, right? More of them voted than us. We also sort of made a stand and made a statement this summer, and they beat us hands down. So what's happened since then, right? Listening through the noise here, hundreds of bills are proposed every legislative session. Many of them this time had to do with firearms. Anybody feel like you were more involved in state politics this year than you ever have been? Just listening and trying to figure out what the heck is going on up there in Richmond. Like, what are they talking about? So several of the firearms bills were referred to study. They died in committee, or they quietly went away. The gun range bills, I had probably 100 emails in a day and messages and texts about the House bill that was going to shut down private indoor ranges. Anybody see that? Yeah. So some of you guys emailed me and said, is this going to shut down Safeside? Well, the good news for us is that it went away, right, for now. But that bill was really targeted at the NRA headquarters range in Northern Virginia. And the reason that we were safe for today on this one was that it required you to have 50 employees in the building while the range was operating in order for you to be violating. And while we have more than 50 employees, our shifts aren't anywhere near that. And so, plus we're spread between two facilities. So the NRA, because their offices are attached, they were the only ones that were really going to hit that. Now, there may have been some training centers that would have been closer, but with creative scheduling or saying contractors instead of employees, like there would have been some workarounds for that. This bill really was targeting the NRA. The problem is that there's nothing really to stop people from next year changing that to 40 or 25 or 10, or saying you can only have 6 lanes in an indoor range. I mean, once you open the can, right, the toothpaste is out of the tube, it's hard to put back in. And so the concern there was not so much this July 1, had that gone through, but next July 1 or the one after that. And so, we appreciate the concern that people showed, and certainly we're watching that closely. But I think it goes to another thing, which is that the headlines and the bill titles are designed and were designed this year to get people riled up on both sides. And so threatening the NRA to shut down their range is a big warning shot. And the NRA and in general, the Democratic Party are sort of at odds all the time, right? And so I thought that was a pretty decent warning shot. If I were the NRA, I would have been concerned, right? Another thing that came up, and this was actually proposed locally by Sam Rasool, was a 15% tax on purchases of guns and ammo. So think about how, as a local small business, we're already sometimes at a disadvantage because we have to charge sales tax. And if you buy something on the internet, some stores still don't charge you sales tax. A lot of that is changing now, but that is still something that we get from time to time. The way this was written, it would only apply to purchases in state. And so if you took a local store like ours, maybe you had the sales tax 5%, maybe you had 15%, that 15 to 20% is a lot of money in your pocket when you're buying $1,000 gun or a $500 gun. And so it really was an attack on small business, an attack on Virginia businesses specifically. And if anybody has a chance to see Delegate Rasool, I think you should let them know how you feel about that. There are also many bills that were sensationalized on social media specifically, and with some pundits. So SB 64 is a law that's already on the books from the 80s, which says it's illegal to train paralegal groups or paramilitary groups, I should say, on firearms training, how to build, that sort of thing. And also, because it's been on the books since 87, it's one of those things that people weren't paying attention to. All of a sudden, SB 64, which all they were doing was adding an amendment inside it, basically, but people started to email us, well, you wouldn't be able to train. And then you saw the extreme side that said, well, I couldn't even teach martial arts anymore because that could be considered a deadly, use of deadly force or something like that. And it just got sensationalized and it got people really riled up. Now, what they did change in here is potentially that when you see folks out parading or drilling with a rifle, if 2 or more people are doing that, they could bust that up. They could press charges against people that were parading or drilling if it was deemed to be in an intimidating manner. Now, that also would change based on where you were in the state, how local law enforcement would see intimidating, because they might be out there with you in some areas of the state. So, but still, it's just one of those examples of the sensational headline of no more firearms training, no more firearms, like how to build an AR-15, which is a class that we offer sometimes. It would be illegal to do that. Well, only if we're training paramilitary groups that are learning how to do it specifically for civil discourse. So that's not what we do here. What you guys do at home, I don't know. But if you're building an AR with us, you're building it for sport shooting, home defense, that sort of thing. We're not trying to build an army here on our AR-15 building class. Big one that got everyone excited, the assault weapons. And of course, it's quotes because we know that assault weapon is a made-up word and a weapon cannot assault. All right, it's a verb. But obviously, this received the most attention from everybody. And in my opinion, SB 16 being presented early on in the session, bills are numbered based on when they're put in. So you have a smaller number like 16 or HB 2 for a universal background check. That means that those things were already ready and they were like stuck in as soon as the hopper opened, right? Get it on the schedule. SB 16 presented, sponsored by Senator Saslaw, ban on AR-15 sales, no grandfathering, turn them in. And that's when you started seeing the come and take it signs come back out and the flags, and Amazon ran out of them for a little bit, shipping them to Virginia. I feel like that was a big miscalculation on the Democrat side because a lot of people that were down there on lobby day were there because of SB 16's language. And it worked to our advantage in the end because it got people's attention. But the reality was they could have been a little more tactful in how they presented a few things. So obviously that was withdrawn in committee by Senator Saslaw in favor of HB 961, which was the House Mirror Bill. So the House Mirror Bill, people said, oh, well, it's a little better because it does ban the further sale of assault weapons, but there's grandfathering. And at the time, it was grandfathering with registration. So you would have paid $50 per AR-15 that you had. You would have done this registration form, and you would have had your name and your serial number put into the Virginia Criminal Information Network as a legal gun owner, which just by itself is a problem. And then you say, well, I don't have one. I've got 8, 16, like whatever it may be. And you're doing the math in your head. And so automatically people are starting to think, well, how will I comply? Will I register one just so that I'm complying? But I didn't realize I had to do all of my, I did the first one I bought, or you register 0. People started talking about digging holes, burying them. But all that language riled people up. So then they say, okay, well, you know what? We're going to grandfather them without registration. And a collection of gun owners took a deep breath and a sigh of relief came out because now we're not going to have to pay that $50 fee. An extremely wide definition of assault weapons was placed in the bill. So it has to do with a centerfire, semi-automatic rifle or pistol with a detachable magazine. And there was some nuanced language about shotguns with certain magazine capacities, rotating magazines, all sorts of things. But then it just had to have one other thing, like a threaded barrel or a collapsible stock or a pistol grip. And essentially it was every AR that's out there. And then a bunch of stuff that shouldn't have even been in there. Your Springfield M1A with a threaded barrel is now an assault weapon, right? And so just super broad. And we're going to talk about it later, but it got people into the discussion some of the people that 5 years ago would have said, I don't care much about them black guns, got some of y'all in this conversation, because all of a sudden you realized y'all weren't out of the picture, right? And your nice, pretty wood guns were on the same chopping block as our plastic black guns. Later, magazines went from 10 rounds to 12 rounds. And we had that same, like the next group of people that were like, oh, I can keep my SIG 365 12 round mag. You know, I hate what they're doing in Richmond, but they're not coming for my SIG, right? And then you get the sponsor of the bill who says that SIG pretty much ships all their guns with 12 round mags. Oh, okay. Well, that's news to us. And then also in 961 buried in there was the ban of sale and transfer of silencers. So initially it was sale, transfer, and possession of silencers, which meant you would have had to give them up. Then it turned into sale transfer, which would meant that we could not sell you a suppressor. But the transfer part is important because even though our deal had been done, if you know anything about NFA, which we'll talk about in a few minutes, it can take up to 12 months. Anybody greater than 12 months? 13, 14? I see, we do it like an auction style around here sometimes. So it can take a year to get approval for an NFA item. So what if you had bought one 10 months ago, July 1st, the hammer comes down, you're out your $1,000 and your $200 tax stamp. And what's going to happen? We're not going to be able to legally transfer it to you, even if we wanted to, because as a licensed dealer, all that's reported. I mean, there's no way that you and I could go into the Walmart parking lot and do one last transfer after the law passed. Okay. So that was a real issue for us because, we have a couple hundred suppressors that are sitting in the back waiting for people to pick them up. We're just waiting for that time to click by. So then, we're like, well, what does suppressors matter? Well, the Virginia Beach shooting was one of the first documented mass shootings where an NFA item was used. NFA items, the reason they were regulated was because of Al Capone and machine guns, the Tommy gun. I mean, the Tommy gun was the birth of the National Firearms Act in a sense. And so throwing suppressors in there, silencers in there, got people that otherwise weren't necessarily paying attention. So the response, this is the good part. Now what color do you see? Green. 91 counties, 12 cities, 22 towns. Now, this map is 2 months old now, so more have been added since then, although we were doing a pretty fine job beginning of January. This grassroots movement of the sanctuary cities, towns, and counties was unlike anything that the Democrats were expecting. So we haven't been able to get ourselves together to agree whether to call it an AR-15 or a MSR. So, in the industry, they want us to say modern sporting rifle, right? That's what our sales reps want to say. Oh, I got these MSRs. That's the lingo because AR-15 has been turned into this like weapon of war, right? That's what the media and the commentary has said. So the NRA and really Remington was at the top of that. Let's call them an MSR, modern sporting rifle. That really describes better what they are anyway. AR-15 we know is just basically a patent from Armalite when they made them. So MSR, okay, great. But whatever you want to call them, we haven't been able to get our act together on it as an industry, as a group of people who own them. But we were able to get our act together for this. And the sanctuary city county movement was born on the other side of the aisle with what? Undocumented, illegal, again, we can't decide on what to say about it, but people that are in the country that aren't documented, that aren't here legally. And you have these cities like San Francisco or entire states in some case that are saying, we're not going to enforce federal immigration law. And yes, we're fighting that and we don't necessarily agree with it, but we also had this thought, okay, well, what if we didn't do that for gun laws in our state? So you guys got yourself out of bed, you shined your shoes, got your best hat on, went down to your county boards of supervisors, and a bunch of y'all were on microphones talking about how this was going to impact you, right? You got down there, you gave a great presentation. We listened to dissent, but we asked our county, town, city leaders to make a public statement that the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of Virginia was going to be valid in our municipality. And a lot of us were successful where we live. The news media picked up on it. They could not figure out what the heck was going on. You got hillbillies and businessmen standing next to each other in line to talk on the microphone about the same thing. Makes no sense, right? And so it was huge on media, right? Because not just social media, but I mean, they just can't figure out what these gun owners are doing. What do you want? Well, we just want the Constitution to still be in effect. Yeah, but what do you want? We don't want anything from you guys. Just leave us alone with it. We already have laws in place. Enforce the laws that are on the books, right? And that's the best answer to a lot of it is we don't need new laws. We need you to look at, extending punishments for gun crimes, not creating gun crimes so that you can make punishments. So we went all over. The news media saw it. They couldn't figure out what the heck happened, what was going on. And then came January. Anybody go to lobby day this year? Yeah, all right. Anybody go to lobby day before this year? So I can count this on like 1.5 hands, all right? And the VCDL, who's been doing this for a dozen years, 18 years, who had a stage about this size and 500 or 600 people a lot of those years, if it was a good year and the weather was just right. 22,000 people in one street, we think, okay? If you've seen the coverage from the helicopter, you know there's more than 22,000 people there. But we'll take it because it was a lot better than the 400, 500, 600 folks in the past. All walks of life, people took off from work. People had off from work because of MLK Day. There were dozens and dozens of buses from all over the state, buses from out of state in some cases. And even when the media tried to turn it into some kind of like ticking time bomb death trap, and the governor built cages around his around the Capitol, we still went down there and had one heck of a party with our gun strapped to us. And some of you guys stepped up and went inside the fence, disarmed yourself, and relied on the rest of us to be outside watching your back. And that's what we did. And only one arrest, and it wasn't from our side, and it was overturned anyway, because we went down there and we behaved ourselves, and then we picked up our trash at the end of the day. And that's how we represented ourselves. All right, so let's talk about what's coming. I had to get you feel good about lobby day before I get into the crap here. So the red flag law is coming. It's not signed yet, but we feel like between now and the end of the day tomorrow, maybe, or whatever they do with their magic days of the week. The reason I bring that up is today at like noon, because the legislature is running out of time, right? They have to be done with their session. So today at noon, through some sort of rule or whatever, it was still Thursday on the legislative calendar because they don't have a budget done yet. There's some other things they're still working out in conference. And so the day of the week doesn't even matter to some Democrats. Don't worry, it's not a power outage. These lights are motion activated, and the motion activation is behind the curtain. I'm just going to turn them back on real quick. Oh, you like that? Well, I'm worried about people tripping because I don't have any low-level lights back there. But next time we do this, I'll work on that. That was kind of a nice mood for a moment there, wasn't it? That was good. But I like to see your faces. So the red flag law has actually gotten better over the last few weeks. And so the big concern about red flag for a lot of people, other than the fact that it's completely unconstitutional, we'll just lead with that, is that we're worried about retaliation. We're worried about our neighbors, our ex-wives, our ex-brother-in-law red flagging us because they know we're passionate about firearms, and we know that they know that would be a way to hurt us, to take our rights to hold them. And so what's happened over the course of the negotiations is that now a Commonwealth's attorney or a law enforcement officer in Virginia, the way it's currently written, would be the only ones that could sort of file the red flag law. So yes, they'll have to get a complaint likely from someone, but it can't be the neighbor going out to the magistrate and saying, oh my God, he's got a gun and he said he's going to kill me, right? So we've created a buffer by having law enforcement and a Commonwealth's attorney as the only level of folks that can issue it. The other thing is that only a judge or magistrate can issue, and it does require a preliminary investigation. So it can't just be that officer going to the judge or magistrate and saying, we need to red flag this person. They're going to have to lay out a case of their investigation to show why that needs to happen. And so, no, it's not perfect, but it is a lot better than where we started at this legislative session. And if you look at other states, we have a lot more protection going into this new time in Virginia with the current law than they do in other states where that neighbor, ex-wife, ex-brother-in-law, whatever, could bring these red flag law charges, whatever, against you. It's also a specific term, 14 days. So the initial term is 14 days, which means this is not a forever thing. And you have the right as a subject to have a hearing in front of a judge with counsel present. So it means you don't have to go argue at the counter. You will get on the docket if you are the subject of a red flag law. You can have legal counsel with you, and that is a big improvement to protect us. And then that day, if they issue the red flag, you will be put into that same VCIN, the Virginia Criminal Information Network. And that is to say, so that you can't, after they take your, quote unquote, take your guns, you can't go into a gun store and replace them. Now, one of the nuances that I read in this, which I found really interesting, is that, and this was earlier this week, and I haven't seen that it's changed, but essentially, when they come and knock on the door, that you have to willingly give them your guns at that point, or they have to go get a search warrant to come find what you didn't give them. So there's no list, right? We don't have a gun registry in Virginia other than NFA items pretty much, but you essentially, they come and say, give us your guns, and you say, okay, here's one, that's all I have. And then they'd have to actually go back to a judge and prove that you have more guns and get a search warrant to come search your house. So the kicking down the door red flag law is not coming to Virginia this year. It may be coming. They get a whole nother chance at this next year. But this year, and again, this is just sort of a factual analysis of where we are. I'm not in favor of this law, obviously, but need you to know that the kicking down the door in the middle of the night is likely not happening this year. All right, the next one is lost stolen gun reporting. This is a slide that I had to update since Monday because politicians are weird. It went from 24 hours to 48 hours. They had this big conference committee, 6 people, 3 from each house, and this is what they decided. Let's do it, but let's give them 48 hours instead of 24 hours. Send a thank you card, Christmas card, whatever you guys want to do. We appreciate that extra 24 hours. There's a $250 fine for failure to report. And I do want to bring up that the timer starts when you know that it is lost or stolen. So if you're on vacation for the week and your car was broken into Monday night, you find out Friday night, that's when your clock starts. So there isn't really an intention here to try to catch you up and not reporting in that 48 hours because you were out of town or you don't go into your shed except once every other week or whatever. But you will need to report that to local or state law enforcement if you have a gun lost or stolen. Preventing access to firearms by minors. This is one of those things that in general, and there's a couple of them, but in general, most gun owners agree with this in spirit that we shouldn't recklessly leave firearms for children to find and injure themselves or the people around them. We just think that the government should stay out of it. Like, we'll do that in our homes. Unfortunately, gun owners haven't done a great job doing that nationally, even in our region. There have been local stories about 2-year-olds, 4-year-olds, 6-year-olds, 8-year-olds who have gotten a hold of a loaded gun, killed themselves, or sibling, a friend. And of course, our heart breaks in those stories, and we want to go straight to the parent or the neighbor or the adult. What they're going to do is just change the criminal nature of it. What's more interesting in this one to me is the class 1 misdemeanor to knowingly allow a child under the age of 12 to use a firearm without direct supervision. And the example I gave Monday night was, let's say you live out in Bedford County, you got a 10-year-old with the squirrel gun, and if he asks permission and you let him go out on the back porch and shoot pop cans, soda cans, whatever, that you would actually be guilty of a class 1 misdemeanor by allowing him to do that, him or her. I'll make this gender neutral, okay? So you would have to be out there on the back porch with him or her, directly supervising. Yes, sir. I think they would consider that direct supervision. It would be that you couldn't. Okay, I won't get into the weeds on this except to say that in scout programs, because we've hosted scouts here, that there is a legal guardianship that happens when they're in the troop, when they're on a sanctioned like event. And so I wouldn't get stuck on the legal guardian part. There is temporary legal guardianship, not in the sense of I'm making a medical decision, but sort of in that sense. If you're on a field trip with school and someone from a teacher needs to make a medical decision on behalf of the student, that's what we signed on the permission slip. Same thing with troops and that sort of thing. So churches, but it may be one of those things that those documents will need to change if you know that it's going to be a firearm specific event. One handgun a month. This is defined as a 30-day period, not a calendar month. And so it is statewide reporting. Currently, if you buy 2 handguns from us as a licensed dealer in a 5 or 6 business day period, we have to report that on the business day of the second purchase. So whether that's 2 at once, whether you come in Monday and Wednesday, we're supposed to report that Wednesday to the ATF National Tracing Center and to the state police. But that is only in our store. So if you go to 6 stores in Virginia and buy a gun Monday through Saturday, which you're legally able to do right now, there's no record of that anywhere that it's happening to you. What this is going to change is basically tying in with the Virginia State Police and tracking this statewide on a background check level. So we have to enter in the computer that you're buying 1 pistol. If you go to another place and buy 1 pistol, it's going to flag on the other end that this is a multiple purchases within 30 days. Now, good news, since Monday, the conference committee has accepted the Senate's language on this, which means that if you have a concealed handgun permit, this 30-day thing will not apply to you. So that's good. That's a win. But it's still going to the governor's desk, and he still has the opportunity to amend. Now, I don't think this is going to be the hill that he wants to die on, if you know what I mean, right? Like the concealed handgun permit holders, we're not the bad guys. If anybody had a chance to see Senator Saslaw's comments about concealed handgun permit holders, might want to send him a Christmas card too. But I don't think the governor will step in. That's just my opinion, that this isn't a big enough thing for him to change. But the House was dead set on not excluding concealed handgun permit holders from this 30-day thing. The Senate didn't really see a problem. This bill is about gun runners, people that are coming down, recruiting locals in Virginia or residents of Virginia to go around and buy handguns. They make a few bucks, 20, 40 bucks, whatever, and then they run them upstate, up the coast, New Jersey, New York. This started way back when this was in the first time, because there was a study that came out that somewhere around 43% of handguns recovered in New York crimes were from Virginia. And so everybody sort of woke up and were like, what are they doing in Virginia down there with all these handguns? We'll sell a handgun to almost anybody, it seems like. And so that was the beginning of the first 1 handgun a month law. There was an exclusion for CHP holders then, and honestly, the CHP holders were never part of the problem. It just wasn't us. So we think that exclusion is going to be in. I think it's going to stay. There's an exclusion for an exchange with the dealer. So if you come in and you buy your Glock 43, and then 2 days later you say, I really wanted a 42, we can do the exchange and essentially give you the 42 on a new background check, but we'd be able to flag the state police that it was an exchange. And so that would not count against you on your count. There's an exclusion for replacement of a stolen handgun, trade-in, purchase. You could trade a gun in, a pistol, handgun, every day, 1 of them, and get a new one. All right. And I would encourage you to do so. That would be great for our business. But if you have your CHP, it doesn't matter, is what it looks like, right? So if you don't have your concealed permit and you want to be able to buy yourself and your husband, like how I said that, a gun for Christmas at the same time, it's said the other way most of the time, but I know how it really is. If you have your concealed handgun permit, it won't be a problem. Universal background checks. This is probably going through, but it is hung up right now. I believe that's, as of today, I believe it's still hung up. So bans private party sales. No, I'm sorry. Let me backtrack. I believe the House today or yesterday accepted the Senate's language on this, which essentially didn't help anybody. The House bill included transfers, which is the movement of a firearm from one party to another without the exchange of monetary goods, services, whatever. The Senate said, if you are going to transfer a gun, like grandpa's going to give grandson a gun, and grandson is not going to do anything in return. Not going to mow the grass for 100 years, not going to wash the car every Saturday, no goods or services exchanged, then the transfer would be able to go through without a background check. So within families, that would be fine. Within, it doesn't even just say families. But if I say to you, I'm going to give you this gun and you're going to give me $100 back, or you're going to mow my grass for 100 years or whatever it is, that's considered a sale because something is exchanged from both sides. So that will need to go through a licensed FFL dealer in the state. Now, they've capped dealers in this bill at a $15 fee. So you have your state fee, $2. And then a $15 fee for private party transfer is all that a dealer will be able to charge. Now, for the consumer, that's good, right? $15. This is only private party transfers. But from the flip side of that is that we're not required to do it. I say we dealers. And so you may find parts of the state where a dealer says, just like a state inspection for, some shops don't do state inspections. There's no money in them, right? And I can argue with someone about that later. And we're still going to have state inspections, I'll just say, on non-gun legislative side. They were talking about canceling them. But $15 in certain parts of the state won't cover the labor needed. And of course, if we get into a $15 minimum wage, this is going to be even harder in certain parts of the state. But because you aren't required as a dealer to offer this service, you could find places in the state where you can't do that private party sale without considerable drive time, or additional money that you'd have to spend to go somewhere into an area where the dealers will do it. So I'm not really sure why that was in there specifically, but there are areas of the state where people will just say, it's not worth it for $15. We're not going to do them. You have to find somewhere else. And it's a class 1 misdemeanor for selling without doing the background check. Well, that $5 is a sale. That's the sale. I think that your attorney will be able to probably win for you on that. But I think that the $15 would be a lot cheaper than his fee for the first 4 minutes. Yeah, we'll do them for $15. I mean, we do these right now. Matthew says no. So we'll do them for $14. I don't know. No, I mean, we talk about transfer fees, and we look at the cost and value. So the time it takes for us to do it, the liability we have for compliance on every transaction when a gun comes in, when a gun goes out. We've got these paper trails. We've got ridiculous computer systems that have to track all this stuff. And then the ATF comes and knocks on the door and sends 4 agents in and says, we want to see all, show me your papers, basically. And so what we look at is the cost of our compliance down the road. That does it cost us today $15 to do that transfer? Probably not in straight payroll, but by the time we audit our books every quarter, with our serial numbers, and when we, get a call from the ATF about a trace because it's lost or stolen, we just know it costs us more than $15 to hold a gun in our inventory. Hopefully, because this is all happening at once, and that might be part of it, is you both got to be here at the same time. We do some private party transfers right now, and a lot of times what I get is not the guys here at the same time. So then we are keeping the gun overnight, which means we have to insure it, which means we have to log it in differently, which means it has to have a home while we wait for the other guy to come pick it up. And so I think that probably our point on that will be the $15 private party transfer. We'll do it. It's required by law to charge that much, but we'll probably have to have both people here at the same time. And if it's going to be a more extended time, or you guys don't want to see each other face to face, whatever it may be, then there may be something like a $5 a day storage fee or something like that. You're going to buy a gun from me and sell it to the other guy? Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah, we'll work that out for you. I think we can do that. Ask JR. He's most likely to do that. No. Probably not. because each one of our employees and employees anywhere in the state that can run a background check have to go through a vetting process first, so that the state believes that the people inputting it are legit crime-free people, essentially. So at gun shows, the exception will be at gun shows where the state police are now required to be there and will do that background check for you. So if you want to do something privately at a gun show, you won't have to get a licensed dealer to do it for you. And I think the state police are going to do that at no charge other than the $2 fee. So that is an exclusion in this law where it says this doesn't have to happen through a dealer at a gun show. The reason is the state police are going to staff it, and they have been for 2 years now, something like that, to where at a gun show you could on your own decide to walk yourself over to the state police table. And in the past, sometimes I've talked to them, they've done 3. I mean, it's not a service that has been going super well for them, I would say. But that is something that at a gun show, a private seller won't have to be kicking up $15 to a dealer for every gun off of his table, and they can still be compliant. Make sense? All right, let's go back to the slide. I want to go back. Sorry, I'm going to do this quickly. I want to go back to red flags for just a second. Sorry, I lost one of my talking points. I think that as gun owners, we should be doing our own red flags in our communities, in our circles of influence. We don't have to call them that. But the other way to say this is just caring about your neighbor. If you have someone in your family or your circle that's troubled or struggling with something, and you know they have firearms or pills or not, like whatever it may be, that's our opportunity to step in and talk to them. And that's what community and neighbors are really about. We shouldn't need the government to have red flag laws, because we should be talking to our friends and family, our circles of influence, our coworkers, when we start to see that something is not going right. One of the things we offer here, we partner with the Blue Ridge Behavioral Healthcare. We participate in a national program called Lock and Talk. And that is just it's an intervention of sorts, but it's just people sitting down with one another and saying, look, man, I know you're depressed, or I know something's going on. I know you've made comments about hurting yourself or hurting other people. And what I'd like to do so that the government doesn't have to get involved is I'd like to step up and take possession of the gun. Now, under my understanding, this would be a transfer, not a sale, right? Because we're not talking about monetary exchange. So you should still be able to do this under the other laws that are coming in. We'll have a day, I think it's in April, where we're doing free trigger locks. So it'll be a lock and talk event, basically. People can come in and get either a trigger guard lock or like the little chain type locks. We also have some little lock boxes that'll be given away that would be more suitable for pills or something like that. But the idea is that we really shouldn't need the government to step up and step in and say, we're going to take your guns. We should be looking out for ourselves and our families. And that's sort of my soapbox on red flag law. So I wanted to get that in because I feel like it's important. And as a gun community, instead of not talking about those hard conversations, we need to be having them. The other thing we've done 2 of them. It's an 8-hour course called Mental Health First Aid. You're much more likely to encounter someone who is having a mental health crisis in your life than someone that you need to tourniquet, right? And so the Mental Health First Aid is a class that's basically about how we step in and talk with people who are having a crisis of some kind. You don't have to be a medical professional, but you need to know, just like you might know how to clean a wound and bandage it, you need to know how to do that same kind of thing with someone's mind who's hurting. And so if you watch our website, you watch our Facebook, we'll be offering that again, probably coming up this summer. It's a great class. And then as a side, not that you need it, but there's also, you get a certification out of it for the administering Narcan. So it's just another part of that sort of bridges first aid and mental health, opioids and addiction, that you actually get to get certified to give Narcan if you need to. So you watch for that. We don't charge anything for it. Blue Ridge Behavioral Healthcare proctors the class. We just host it. All right, let me get back on track here. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on NFA ownership. John Pierce was here with us Monday night. If you didn't get to see him, it is on our Facebook page. You can go back and watch his part. And I like John because he was my pit bull Monday night. I got to maintain a cool, calm face, and he got to light in about the Democrats some. So guess they got what they deserved from John. But NFA ownership, the National Firearms Act of 1934 regulated silencers, short barrel rifles, short barrel shotguns, destructive devices, and then this big classification of any other weapon. You need to be an attorney in most cases to figure out what that is. On the cuff, it requires a $200 tax stamp per item and an extended wait period. We talked about that 12-month wait period. Additionally, there's reporting requirements for crossing state lines for some NFA items. So you can't just drive over to West Virginia with your short barrel rifle because your buddy's got some land over there and you want to shoot on it. You got to have permission to do it. Items can be owned by an individual, a trust, or a corporation. And what we saw, and the reason I bring this up, is that we talked about House Bill 961 and how silencers, suppressors, and if anybody wants to argue after with me about what we should call them, I'll be happy to do that. The ATF calls them silencers. That is the legal term for them. But as we know, if you ever shot one or been around one, they're not movie silent. They are suppressors. They suppress sound just like a muffler does. There are countries where it's rude to shoot without one because it's so loud. My neighbors would like us all to have suppressors. So, and we do an event in December called Silent Night where we only shoot suppressors in the range, which is kind of fun. But silencer ownership has really blossomed over the last 4 or 5 years. When we got into the business, I didn't know you could own a suppressor. I never knew anyone that had one, never seen one in real life, figured only James Bond had them. Got myself educated real quick, and that was a problem. All right. Now we have Safeside. This is the suppressors. And honestly, I didn't say this Monday night, but I'll just, since he's back here, Matthew really wanted a Glock 18. Does anybody know what that is? A full auto Glock. Well, why does anyone need it? Because they made it. They made it for someone to have. So we need it. And the Glock 18 shoots so fast that usually by the time the magazine is empty, the first piece of brass has barely touched the ground. And it's just like a beautiful golden rainbow, right? And it's wonderful. But we're told the only way you could get one of those was to have an FFL and have your SOT, which is how we can sell NFA items. So we have the Glock 18. It's awesome. Too dangerous for anyone else to shoot. It just sits in the safe. But for the most part. But I say all that to say this. If you want an NFA item in your arsenal, in your collection, now is the time that you need to do it because 961 is coming back up next year. All right. It will be back in some form or another. My hunch is they will be smarter next year and they will break it up into parts. The reason that it failed is because all these things were together. But the temperature on magazine capacities, it would have passed if that were its own bill. The 10 or 12 rounds, whatever it was, Senate Judiciary would have sailed that through. It would have gone all the way through the governor's desk. He would have signed it the first day he got it. They won't make the same mistake next year. All right. Majority is guaranteed. 21-19 probably. You could have someone, we could have scandals, but as we know, scandals don't really impact our politicians. The count could change a little bit, but it's not going to change the balance of power. So keeping that in mind, if you're thinking about it, we've got 15 months until July 1st of next year, something like that, or 15, 16. So if you're thinking about NFA ownership and you don't want to get your blood pressure up in February of next year, now's the time to talk about it. Trusts are just a good way to go because multiple people can be in the trust for an NFA item, and it allows multiple people to maintain possession of the NFA item. In an extreme example, a suppressor that's owned by an individual, say me, if I own one as an individual, if I had that in the safe at my house and my wife had the combination to that safe, she could technically have what's called constructive possession of that suppressor, which would then be an illegal transfer of an NFA item, which could be like a $25,000 fine and 12 years in jail or something like that. Now, that's never been done, but by the way the law is written, it could be. So if they were looking for an opportunity to jam you up, NFA is a great way to do that if you don't follow the rules very carefully. A trust would allow you to have multiple people in it. So in my trust, my brother's in it. I've got a family friend who has a farm, has some coyotes from time to time, needs to take care of. So any of us can be in possession of it. And if a bill passed that said it could no longer be in the state, so we wouldn't have time to sell it because it takes 12 months for you to sell it. Instead of having to turn it in, cut it up, or bury it, you could have someone in your trust from another state you could transfer it to them to hold for safekeeping, until we get people with brains back in the state house. So it is one of those things that extra $100 or $200 on the front end to have the trust really could save you your investment later. It also simplifies the situation in the event of a death. So instead of having to transfer it as part of an estate, a new trustee would just be put in place, basically. So there's no legal transfer. So father had it, he's passed away, son becomes a trustee. As far as the ATF is concerned, the trust still owns it. So there's no paperwork, no one needs to know about it. It's still sort of safe in the trust. All right, so how do we change? My first thing is about ending divisiveness. I just love to say the word, in the gun community. So we need suits, blue jeans, skirts, overalls, camo wearing folks, all working together. I mentioned the folks that don't care about the black guns, your Mini 14, your ranch rifle, your M1A, they're all being attacked in the same manner, legally defined in the same way. Collectors and enthusiasts, up your budget a little bit or pass on one of those deals and send some money to a pro-gun PAC or to a candidate. Find a PAC that supports local, state, pro-2A candidates and messaging. That could mean billboards. That could mean positive Second Amendment media that, yes, we have to buy. Now, we got some of that the other night where even with orange stickers on, we all looked real nice. And we weren't, I had one of the people ask me, well, how come nobody had long guns slung over their shoulder tonight? It was Monday night. We don't do that till Tuesday, And they would have believed me if I said that, like, oh man, we missed it. Tuesday night was when the Barrett 50 cals come out to meetings. And anybody see the 50 cal guy? I mean, that was the picture that they chose. And look, he had every right. He's actually a range owner in New York, and we have some mutual contacts. But that is what they think that we do. And so a couple of them were really surprised that some of you guys weren't even carrying at all, maybe Monday night, not open carrying. So anyway, getting money into PACs and into candidates' pockets who are running that have pro-gun agendas is really important. And when we surveyed our customer base after, I guess it was in January. Yeah, it was after Lobby Day. About 45%, I think, 40 to 45% of people had never given to a political campaign. And I just got to tell you that money does help with elections. Not Bloomberg's election, okay, as we saw this week. But it does help with local candidates who are significantly underfunded. And sometimes at the local level, we've got an election coming up in Roanoke City in November now, which was moved from May. And you can hear about that a little bit. A candidate running for Roanoke City Council that's a Republican here is going to need dollars to win. They are going to need billboards and yard signs and that sort of thing because the name recognition part really matters at a local level. And so think about and find ways that you can get involved with volunteering, knocking on doors, but also with your dollars. So if you're big spenders, find someone that you can slip a little bit of that to that's going to stand up for even if we can't get a majority in Roanoke City or you don't live in Roanoke City, the voice of dissent sometimes is enough on a city council to hold up some of the stuff that's coming. Recruit someone to shooting sports. So how do we change things? There's a +1 movement that the National Shooting Sports Foundation has, but offer to help someone choose their first gun. Encourage someone to get their concealed handgun permit. Volunteer with the VCDL at gun shows, other recruiting events. They have shooting events. Work the phone banks for a pro-gun candidate organization. There are opportunities to get involved. Change the face of shooting sports. Keep your firearms away from unauthorized people, prohibited parties, your felon Uncle Joey who's over for Thanksgiving. Don't get on the news for that kind of stuff, right? Learn about self-defense laws in Virginia. We recently hosted a U.S. Law Shield seminar last week on Wednesday talking about self-defense laws in Virginia. At the end of this month, we'll have another one brought in here by USCCA with a local attorney, Virginia attorney, who's going to be talking about the same thing. Learn these laws so you're not on the news for that. Attend a pro firearm event dressed professionally. I'll just leave it at that. I almost said some stuff is going to make y'all mad at me. But pro-gun extends beyond a candidate, a party, a phrase on a flag, a symbol of some kind. It's how we live, and we have to be careful that we don't give the media the narrative that they want from us. And so be mindful of how you dress, how you act when you're out at a pro-gun event. Check in on family members and friends who may be struggling with mental health issues. Contact local, state, and federal representatives. Did anybody send their first email to a state congressman or delegate this year? So some of y'all are not young that raised your hand. A little older than me, maybe. Got some gray in the beard. Yeah, okay. No, I don't mean that. Most of y'all can text now, which is great. But it was the first time you felt compelled to reach out, look up that email address, send a message. Yes, certified. He's saying if you send a letter certified, $2.50, and they have to sign for it. So at least it's in the hands of someone in that office. There are 242 days until the presidential election. Charlie, I'm almost ready for you. All right, 242 days until the presidential elections and Roanoke City Council elections. Gun owners must get motivated to vote. We must register and recruit new voters. Now, you have at the back here a voter registration table, and this is the Botetourt Republican Women's Group, and I don't know how the guys are back there, but it is the women's group. Thank you very much. And they're going to be spending, along with another organization, some Saturdays in our store talking to people about voter registration. But there's three things that you need to be thinking about. So one, are you registered to vote? And I hope that you are. And if not, I sincerely hope you'll go back and talk to them. But there's two other things. We also need your vote to count if you actually make it out there. And so if your address has changed, it needs to be updated 22 days before the election. Otherwise, you are at risk of having your vote invalidated. If your name has changed, marriage, divorce, you don't like it, whatever it is, or if it's wrong in the voter registration system, again, your vote can be invalidated. So if you have any of those concerns, talk to them back there about that, because it's not just enough to get people registered to vote and get people to the polls. We've got to make sure that our votes count legally. And so it might be a time to tidy up your voter reg and just make sure, or if you move this year and it's one of those things that you put off, update it before, let's say October 1. Let's be safe, okay? If you're going to vote in the elections in November. All right, Charlie, come on up here. I'm going to take a quick break, and I'm mindful of the time. So Charlie is the chairman of the Roanoke City Republican Committee. I want to clarify his role because we were misquoted a few times. He's not on city council. He's not the chairman of the city council. Not everybody got that, and if he was, we'd be throwing eggs at him, okay? But the Roanoke City Republican Committee, he's the chairman of that, and he's going to talk to you a little bit about what is coming up in Roanoke and in these districts that we're around. And so, Charlie, I'll give you the floor for a few minutes to educate.
Thank you. And can everybody hear me? We had a little issue with that last time. Can you hear me now? All right. Thank you. First of all, I'd like to thank Safeside for putting on this gun owners town hall. This was really awesome on Monday night, and it's a similar crowd tonight. I'm really glad to see all you folks come out here, and I really appreciate Safeside Tactical organizing this, because this is the kind of event that we need to have happen to get more people involved. As Mitch said, I'm Charlie Nave. I'm chairman of the Roanoke City Republican Committee, and I'm often asked about what happened at the last election. As you know, the Republican Party was put in the minority in both houses of the legislature for the first time in more than 20 years. So people ask me, what happened? And, I'm just here in Roanoke. I only really know what's going on in Roanoke, but things happened in Roanoke, things happened all over. And there was a whole lot of factors that led to this. But it's safe to say that a big part of the problem is that the Republican Party needs a reboot. There are problems within the Republican Party, and there are people that need to be replaced. And you all can help us do that. The more interesting question, I think, is how can we citizens protect our Second Amendment rights? And the answer is clear. We need to do more. We all need to do more. We need to get involved in politics, even though it's icky, even though, a lot of the people who are in politics are not so fun to be with. But we need to realize that we can sit through some of these meetings and we can be involved and we can have an influence. We can take control of the Republican Party. We can be the fist inside the Republican glove and protect our Second Amendment rights. We need to elect legislators. We need to elect governors. We need to re-elect a president. And we need those people to appoint judges. Thank you. We need those people to appoint judges. We need them to appoint officers and bureaucrats. And all of those people that we elect and that we have appointed, they need to fear God. They need to fear us. And they need to understand that there's going to be some kind of consequence when they fail to protect our Second Amendment rights and when they fail to protect any of our rights, for that matter. It's not just about the Second Amendment. We want them all. So how do we do that? Again, we need to do more. 25 to 30% of the people out here in Western Virginia, in the 5th, 6th, and 9th congressional districts, weren't even registered to vote. And some of those folks who were registered to vote didn't vote. So that's got to be our first job, is to get people registered so they can be involved at the polls. I'm convinced that if we get all these people registered and motivated, we can outvote Northern Virginia, we can outvote Richmond, and we can outvote Hampton Roads. And we can make this a red state again, and we can make this a state where you just can't survive politically when you threaten people's Second Amendment rights. Now, and despite real challenges here in the city of Roanoke, we have a better shot at electing Republican city council members than we have had in a long time. I think I've got several of my committee members here today. They're all over there standing by the wall. They're waving. Maynard's got a hat like mine. And I encourage you, please come on over and talk to us, get to know us, because there's certain things that you can do today to start this process. And I'd like to go through some of them. First of all, you can register to vote, and the ladies from Botetourt can help you with voter registration. But other things that you can do, if you're living in the city of Roanoke, and you can do all of these things wherever you are living, so it applies to everyone. You can join our committee. You can help us pass out sample ballots on election day, which is going to be absolutely crucial because city council candidates are not identified by party. You're just going to have, and plus we're going to have a ballot so long you have to flip it over to get to the city council election. And most people aren't going to know who's a Democrat and who's a Republican. So we got to pass out sample ballots so people know. So we need people to be election officers to prevent election fraud. That's a paid job, by the way. We need people to let us put signs in your yard. We need people to make phone calls to get out the vote. That's something you can do without even leaving your house. We have technology today where you can use your own phone from your own home and make those calls for us. We need people to drive voters to the polls. We need people to knock on doors for our committee and for our candidates. We need help organizing and running fundraisers. As Mitch said, it costs a lot of money to buy these signs, to put things in the mail, and to keep people informed. And we need people to recruit volunteers to handle all those jobs that I just mentioned. it will take a small army of about 400 people to fully staff all the volunteer spots we need in this city. And that's a crazy, far out of sight dream. But we need to start somewhere. And if we just had 50, we'd be doing fantastic. So I want to encourage you all to come to our mass meeting on March 14th at Garden City Baptist Church. We've got some flyers over here with that information. This is an event that comes around just once every 2 years. And the Republican Party, and on paper, the Democrat Party, is this massive grassroots organization. And it just sucks in information from the grassroots at the local level, and it filters it up to the regional level, and it filters it up to the state level. And at the mass meeting, this is where when the local people get their chance to have their voices heard. Unfortunately, all right, let me back up a little bit. Three things happen at the mass meeting. For one, we elect the committee for the next year, and we elect a chairman. I'm running for re-election. I'd love to have your vote. If you're a Roanoke City voter, please come out. But we also elect delegates to the 6th District Congressional Convention and to the state convention. That's how our voice gets heard at the regional and at the state level. And to be elected a delegate, you have to pre-file. Unfortunately, in Roanoke City, the pre-file deadline was today at noon. If you didn't pre-file by today at noon, you're out of luck for these 2 years. But if you're in Roanoke County or if you're in Botetourt, there's still time. And we have forms to get you registered as a pre-filed as a delegate for Roanoke County over on that table. So this is your opportunity to get involved at the most propitious time. When your voice can be the most effective. At the mass meeting, like I said, we'll be voting on us, or on me, but we'll also be having candidates who are going to be elected at all these conventions speaking. So you'll get to hear about the plans that these various people have for taking the party in a new direction, hopefully. And of course, this is just the beginning. You can do all these things today, but that can't be the end of it. We need to be working every day. Okay, well, maybe not every day, just a lot of days. But we need to be working all the time to defend our rights. This is a very American calling, and this is a very Virginia calling. You know, this is the kind of thing that Virginians have done for 400 years. If the grassroots people don't agitate and vote and organize, then feckless politicians are going to just take the opportunity to take away our rights. We're the bulwark that defends our rights, and so we have to act to make sure that they're protected. Now, I know that's a whole lot of stuff, and there was some jargon in there, but if you have any questions at all, please come by our table and talk to us. We want to talk to you. The door to getting influence within the Republican Party, at least, is open. Please come walk through it with us. Thanks very much.
Hey, Drew, if you want to make your way up here for me. So, a couple more slides. We're going to be out of here right at 8. Appreciate everybody hanging out Friday night with us. Get back to the PowerPoint for me. There are 606 days until the Virginia governor and House elections in November of 2021. We must get motivated to vote. We must recruit, blah, blah, blah. It's the same stuff. But 600 and some days is a long time to stay motivated. And one of the things I wanted to share with you tonight, so Andrew's coming up here just to talk for a few minutes, but these laws aren't just about Constitution and our forefathers and people that fought for us. These are about impacting our families, our ability to protect ourselves, something that's bigger than government, than Constitution, our God-given right to self-defense. And Andrew has a compelling story about why it matters in his life and his household. And so I wanted him to share with us tonight about that, because these are the kind of stories and the kind of things that you need to be thinking about when you feel like you're slipping that motivation, or when someone says it's not that big a deal, or whatever. I think Andrew's story just resonated with me when I heard it, because it really is the basis of our fight. It's not R's and D's. It's about our protection and protection of our loved ones and family. So, Drew, come on up here, sir. Have at it with him.
Thank you, sir. Good evening. My story is simple. My dad used to always say when I was little, you know, one day you'll be just like me. When I say that, I mean wisdom. There's a lot of wisdom I see in this room. And as long as you keep, for those that do not yet have wisdom in this room, as long as you keep watching the sunrise and sunset, you will eventually gain a lot of wisdom. I'm starting to gain mine right now. And in that, I met a wonderful woman, my wife, Louise Whiting. And we've gone through a lot of struggles and different journeys. And within that struggle and journey, my wife has different ailments. She's disabled. So finding the perfect fit for a firearm is a journey in its own right. All of you that are in this room that have wisdom know what I'm talking about. Back gone are the days where that 357 Magnum wasn't very much of a problem. That 9mm looks a lot better now, doesn't it? So I work nights. As I said, my wife has a lot of different ailments. She has rotator cuff issues. She has plates in her neck. She has problems with her hip. Of course, some of that's probably due to me chasing her around the house some of the time. But the bottom line is, when I'm not there, what I don't have anymore was a worry that she was able to defend herself with what she felt comfortable with to do so. We've traveled a lot of different places. We've sampled a heck of a lot of different firearms because she is restricted in what she can use, right? Recoil management is an issue now. Again, the individuals with wisdom in the room understand what I'm talking about. So therefore, when the AR-15 came along and we traveled down that path, I was like, okay, that is awesome. She can use this. Yes. So I got her out. She's like, baby, I don't know. I'm like, trust me, just pull the trigger one time. And there was the birth of a woman that can defend herself, manipulate that firearm, clean that firearm, clean the optic, actually sight in the optic. And I have no doubt in my mind that my baby can take care of herself with that firearm better than she could, or for that matter, anybody else could that are, again, with wisdom, because of the recoil management, the buffer system. Okay. And then came Northam with this agenda, and it shook me to my core, because it's like, oh my God, you're going to take away my wife's ability to defend herself while I'm at work. And I was behind the 8 ball, man. I just recently started getting into politics in 2016, and recently really started digging into it in 2018. So I'm happy to say that I'm actually going to be a delegate up in Franklin County. Trust me, do whatever you can. This fight is going to be a fight that we're going to fight for a very long time. Strap in, get comfortable, and get your game face on. But the other thing that I do a lot, I start out coming to Safeside to shoot, have my fun, and then I wind up having a guy at work say, hey, I hear you're the guy to talk to about firearms. I'm like, great. So I wind up coming with 2 or 3 or 4 people. But I feel comfortable with that because it makes me happy to teach people about firearm safety, recoil management, calibers, bullet speed, velocities. That's something that we all should do. That's how we change the face of our great country. That's how we add on to our ranks. If we don't do it, we're going to lose, and we're going to lose big. And that goes for anybody that cares about, I understand about sports shooting and all that, but my core value is self-defense. It's what it all started with. So each one teach one. Thank you very much.
Those are the kind of stories that are happening all across Virginia and across the country that, people are realizing new reasons, I should say, that firearms ownership is important. And we love the competitions and we love the sport shooting, and but the root core, or the root option of helping our family, protecting our family, or outfitting them to protect themselves, as he put, it just and with women, women are one of the fastest growing segments of the shooting sports industry, and certainly our customer base. And a firearm in the hands of a woman is the force equalizer that, health problems, physical stature, how you're outmatched physically, maybe. That's why groups like A Girl and a Gun, who's here tonight, are just growing. And if you haven't had a chance and you're a lady here, or a lady and you're here, so that's now everybody, go back and talk to Sue, talk to someone with the purple pistol on their shirt. The ladies group meets 3 times a month now. Is that right? 4 times a month. And they have a breakfast and bullets. They have a girls night out. They have I think we're doing a matinee starting this month, and then an evening. And so we have 4 opportunities a month at Safeside, and we just host them. It's a national organization where women of all ages, and some of them have guns, some of them don't. I first met some of these ladies, I think 6 years ago, over off of Plantation Road at one of their meetings when we were pretty new. And I'm just so happy to have them here to help us at these town halls, but also just to get the message out that there's a safe place for women to come together. And it's I have heard that women don't like to be told by a man sometimes how to use the gun. Now, certainly not my wife would never say that. I'm sure. Right. Or yours. Yeah. Many of you. But it's a great organization, and we're happy to have them. Okay. We're wrapping up the next meeting. So, of course, next, go back to the slide, please. We talked about who will run. Okay. I don't need that because you already got it. Next meeting. We're going to be in Lynchburg next Thursday night and Friday night. Our Thursday night session is already oversold, overbooked, basically. Friday night, we think that'll come on around. We got a few dozen people there for Friday night, but we are going to look at doing this again. Many of you have given us feedback this week about keeping these sort of things going. Obviously, the topics may be a little different, but certainly this summer, we're going to be looking at some things. We're going to be looking at doing something prior to the November elections, just to make sure that everybody remembers where we are in the state of things. Being a great opportunity to recruit someone to come in and hear. We will keep these as not apolitical, but we will keep these things as these are not rallies. There are other organizations that are rallying, and that's great. It's really designed to be educational and make sure that we're on the same page about what's actually coming. You may receive an email to provide some feedback directly to us over the next couple of weeks, just asking you a few specific questions if you attended, what you'd like to see in the future. We have streamed these on Facebook and YouTube, and you can go back onto our YouTube channel or our Facebook page and go back and scroll and see if there are any bloopers of me. And then I also like to know, about the format, the time, duration, that sort of thing. Is this a reasonable time to do it? Is the length of the format decent for you? And that pretty much wraps up for me. If you have time, you don't have to rush out of here. The VCDL is here. The Roanoke City Republican Committee's here. We got some Trump type guys over there, right? the voter registration, VCDL, Girl and a Gun are all here tonight to talk to you. And if you have any questions for me specifically, I'll be hanging out right back over there if you want to come over. Remember, I'm not an attorney. Nothing I've said or done is provided legal advice. Blah, 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 okay? But welcome to Safeside. Thank you guys for coming. Have a great night. Thanks for coming.